is the 18th century. America doesn't exist yet, at least not officially, and there's a game going around being played in England called Rounders. And people are like, wow, this is fun, but also confusing because we're British. We only know how to kick around a football. And then in 1845, a guy named Alexander Cartwright says, let's make this less confusing. And he writes down some rules, like you can't hit people with the ball, and you can't run the bases counterclockwise. And just like that, baseball is born. Except it's not called baseball yet, but we get to that later. For right now, it's called town ball or base, depending on who you ask. But people play it anyway, because what else are you going to do in the 1800s? Read a book? And now it's 1869. The Civil War just ended, and everybody's like, hey, let's play some ball. And the Cincinnati Red Stockings are like, what if we pay people to play instead of, giving them a handshake at the end of the game? This will start the first ever professional baseball team. And meanwhile, the National League is formed because people are tired by everybody else playing by their own rules. So they're like, hey, let's make a league with set rules, because they can. Because America at this point existed, along with it, freedom. But wait, a couple years later, in 1882, the American Association says, hey, we could do that too. So now there's two leagues, the American League and the National League. And they don't like each other, because one sells alcohol at games and the other one doesn't. But eventually they decide, hey, baseball is really boring without alcohol, and they merge in 1891, having 8 teams apiece. But the American League and the National League still kind of don't like each other. So they're like, let's ball this out. Our best team and your best team will face each other in the World Series for the championship. In 1903, the first ever World Series happened, where the Boston Americans, who would later become the Red Sox, beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the National League is like, okay, but let's run it back next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. Now with the radio coming out, everybody is watching the MLB, or listening to the MLB. Everybody's going to the games and everybody loves baseball. So when the 1919 World Series came around, and one of the most dominant teams in the league at that point, the Chicago White Sox, surprise surprise, was set to face the underdogs, the Cincinnati Reds, the Mafia was like, hey, lose the series. Lose it. We'll give you so much money if you lose the series. And after it came out that the series was fixed, the MLB decided to have the first ever commissioner, who immediately banned 8 players from playing baseball ever again. Now this is the part of the video where I get on my knees and beg you to subscribe to my channel. So go ahead and do it, or your team is not making the playoffs this year. And the White Sox at that time was trying to trade for a guy named Babe Ruth from the Red Sox. But because Shoeless Joe Jackson was banned from the MLB, they couldn't do the trade no more, and he gets traded to the Yankees. I don't know why I'm mentioning this. It's not like Babe Ruth could just turn a whole franchise around and make them one of the most dominant teams in MLB history, right? Now during this time, there was a lot of two-way players. A lot of players that hit and pitched, but nobody was really good at it as much as Babe Ruth. Although he didn't pitch for very long, he left his mark. He was really the first player to ever try and hit home runs. He was the first ever power hitter in the MLB, and it sparked a whole change in the MLB. Instead of going for singles, everybody starts trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark, swinging out of their shoes. Strikeouts are up, and hits are down. It's 1940 now, and some guy with a funny mustache in Germany decides to start World War II. And some very stupid guy in Japan decides to bomb Pearl Harbor, bringing America into the war. And there's a ton of players like Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio who decide to fight in the war. And the MLB doesn't really know if they should continue playing, but FDR told the MLB to keep playing because it was good for morale. And he did serve as the president for 12 years, so I think he knows a little bit about what he's saying. Then eventually the war ends, with America dropping 2 nukes on Japan. But don't worry, they'll get their revenge soon. There's a big part of MLB history that I've been missing, the Negro Leagues. With the rise of the power hitter becoming more and more prominent in the MLB, Josh Gibson is becoming one of the best power hitter, and just hitter overall, in Negro and MLB history, owning many different records. But unfortunately he would die in 1947 at the age of just 35, months before Jackie Robinson made it to the big leagues. Robinson was the first ever black player to play in the MLB. Prior to him, it was a pretty much agreement between all owners that black people was not allowed to play. And now it's the 1970s, and baseball's like, let's get colorful. Players start growing crazy facial hair and sideburns. It's also the era of disco, but we don't talk about that much. And players get more freedom with a new thing called the free agency. And then the 80s happened. There's absolutely nothing that happened in the 80s besides Nolan Ryan throwing really fast. And now it's the 90s. Baseball players are getting really big for some reason, and there's more home runs than ever. And then in 2001, Congress is like, hey, what's up with the steroids? And the MLB is like, we're working on it. They did not work on it. Now, with all that behind us, we're in the 2000s. The Athletics invent a new thing called Moneyball, using computers and other technology to judge if a player is good or not. Hopefully that will work out for them for the next 24 years. It's also the start of the interleague play era, where the American League and National League teams finally play against each other in the regular season. It's also the start of the Baseball World Classic, bringing the best players from each country to play in a tournament to see who is the best at baseball. And MLB teams absolutely hate it. And the 2005 White Sox win the World Series that year, starting a dynasty that would even last up until today. And finally, we hit the 2010s. StatCast becomes the new thing that tracks everybody's stats. The Houston Astros become really good at banging on trash cans. It seems to be a start for a new era for Major League Baseball, with young stars blowing people's minds like Ohtani, who finally got his get back for Japan, and Paul Skeens, who's dating Livy Dunn. We got new rules, bigger bases, a pitch clock, and coming soon, robo-umps. The MLB allegedly is choosing balls to encourage more home runs, and players are getting younger and younger. And the MLB integrated Negro League stats into the major leagues, meaning there's now a ton of Negro League players getting recognized for their stats. It was a controversial move for the MLB, a lot of people disagreeing with it because Negro League players didn't face MLB talent. But there's a ton of evidence to say that Negro League players was better than the MLB players at that time. So I say it's fair game. Stay tuned, because in 100 years from now, I'll be making a part 2 to this video about the rest of the century, condensing it down to 10 minutes. And if you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, because I need money. I ended up gambling all my money, betting that the White Sox will win over 50 games this year.